John Wayne Gacy woke up to a boy holding a knife in the doorway. He immediately struggled with him, and in self-defense, Gacy committed murder. Gacy looked on as the boy bled to death and experienced so much serenity from it that he decided to become one of the world's worst serial killers. John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown, was one of the worst serial killers in U.S. history. He had assaulted and murdered at least 33 young male victims. It was many years after being convicted of assault in 1968 when Gacy's murders be discovered. The world was shocked. This killer was born in 1942 in Chicago, Illinois, the very state he would terrorize later on. Gacy had grown up with siblings and an alcoholic father who would beat the children with a razor strap if they were perceived to have misbehaved. His father assaulted Gacy's mother as well. The children soon toughened against violence, and Gacy would not cry after a beating. To make matters worse, Gacy suffered isolation in school as he was unable to play with other children due to a condition called congenital heart disease. This was a source of great shame to his father, who had wanted a son with physical capabilities. But for all appearances, it seemed that he recovered from that trauma soon enough. As an adult, he worked as a fast food chain manager during the 1960s and became a self-made building contractor. He even got involved with the community as the Democratic precinct captain in the Chicago suburbs during the 1970s. He was definitely well-liked in the community, and his personal life was not isolated either. He was married and divorced twice and had 2 biological children. So where did the name Killer Clown come in? Gacy was actually a member of a Chicago area Jolly Joker Clown Club and used to perform in his costume at children's parties. And also when he killed. He used to put on this costume. His alter egos were Pogo the Clown and Patches the Clown. The Killer Clown used to lure in victims in his own home by making false promises of construction work or some other ruse. Then he used to capture them, assault them, and then eventually strangled them to death with a rope or even with his bare hands. But why the clown costume? It wasn't anything deep. Gacy actually told the authorities what this disguise actually meant. Gacy said that clowns can get away with murder. An odd explanation, to say the least. Gacy's first known murder occurred on January 2, 1972. According to Gacy's later account, following a family party, he decided to drive to the Civic Center in the Chicago Loop to view a display of ice sculptures. This is where he would meet his first victim. While watching the ice sculptures, Gacy met a 16-year-old named Timothy Jack McCoy. Timothy got into Gacy's car, and the two of them went on a sightseeing tour of Chicago. Gacy then drove Timothy to his home with the promise of a ride the next morning. He would soon be dead at Gacy's hands, but surprisingly, he would be killed in self-defense. Gacy claimed that he woke up early the next morning and found Timothy standing in his bedroom doorway with a kitchen knife in his hand. He then jumped from his bed, and Timothy raised both his hands in a gesture of surrender, but he accidentally cut Gacy's arm. So he twisted the knife from the boy's hand, banged his head against the bedroom wall, kicked him against the wardrobe, and generally beat him a lot. Gacy was kicked in the stomach, after which he stabbed Timothy numerous times in the chest. As Timothy lay dying, Gacy claimed that he had washed the knife in his bathroom, then went into the kitchen and saw an open carton of eggs and a table laid out for 2. It turns out poor Timothy was only trying to call Gacy to breakfast and had accidentally carried the knife into the bedroom. Gacy buried the dead body of Timothy in a crawl space and later covered his grave with a layer of concrete. In an interview later, Gacy said that even though he felt very tired after killing Timothy, he was also content. And when he listened to the boy dying in front of him, that was the most happy he had ever been. He added, "That's when I realized that death was the ultimate thrill." 1 week after this, another boy disappeared, John Petukovich. This was actually another one of Gacy's employees from Illinois. John's car was found parked far from Gacy's home with his jacket and wallet inside. The key was still in the ignition. The day before his disappearance, John had confronted Gacy over 2 weeks' outstanding back pay. John's father had personally called Gacy, who was as charming as ever, and claimed that he was happy to help and just so sad that John had run away. The police questioned Gacy, who said that John and 2 of his friends had shown up at his house and demanded the pay, but a compromise was reached, and everyone had left in good spirits. Over the next 3 years, John's family suspected Gacy and called the police hundreds of times to urge them to investigate him. They didn't listen, of course. Gacy later admitted to encountering John, who was exiting his car on the same street it was found. He waved to attract Gacy's attention and told him that he wanted to talk. Gacy sat down in the car and even convinced John to come to his house. In the house, John drank with Gacy and was conned into having his hands cuffed behind his back. Gacy sat on his chest for a while and then strangled him. He stacked John's body and intended to bury it later. And this was just the start of his killing career. Soon after this, he would enter what he called the cruising years, where he killed most of his victims at a mind-numbing frequency. The police would have no idea until it was too late. One of America's most prolific serial killers had begun his killings. What triggered John Wayne Gacy's compulsion to become a serial killer? Do you think his violent childhood had anything to do with it? Please comment below.